everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the WrestleWatch podcast. It's a bit of a short week for us here. I am Ryan here.
I am Doug. Hello, Ryan.
Welcome
back.
Yeah, how are you doing this week? Has your sinuses deflamed? Is that the opposite of inflamed?
I don't think I had it. Is it a sinus issue if it's just a really nasty cough? Because it's like, I feel like I didn't really have any sinus issues.
Well, then I guess you didn't know. No. So how are your lungs?
See, now we got to get like an ear, nose, and throat doctor on here because we got to. I don't know if we're talking about the right things now because it is a sore throat a lung issue? I would probably say no.
I guess say that's a throat issue. Yeah.
It is, yes. So, and the throat is fine.
Okay.
For the most part. Like it's, I still have an occasional cough here and there, but I can control it for the most part. So that's the important thing.
That's good.
How's your? I mean, this is a pretty quick turnaround for us, right? Because we just recorded on Wednesday and now it's Sunday. So
yeah, we just we've had a very short week for us here on WrestleWatch. Yeah, I mean this is hopefully getting us back to this being the day of the week that we do the show. We'll find out, I suppose, soon enough if this is really going to be the day that we do the show. But I don't expect us to go back to Wednesday nights.
No, but there's, you know what though, there's a lot that happened in Ford. It's going to be a super long episode, I imagine, but we have a decent amount to talk about.
Yeah, we have a decent amount, and as people that are watching on the stream right now on YouTube, if you are listening on the audio version, know that we do stream this live on YouTube to record the broadcasts. So if you ever want to get in on the discussion of WrestleWatch live and converse with us and, have us, react to what you're thinking of things live, make sure to follow us on Twitter so that you get updates of what the schedule is for us and get reminders when we're about to go live. But yeah, so the big thing for this week is Motor City Machine Guns, I think. Do you think about that, Doug?
Yeah, obviously that's the big jump. So when we talk about, when we're looking at what we just do here, obviously seeing a big debut, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
How do you feel the buzz was after the debut happened?
I felt like there was no buzz.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything. It was weird because maybe it's because well, so this is something that we're going to talk about. Actually, could you start us off with? Do you have the what do we do here on WrestleWatch thing? As yes. I'm going to show on screen right now as the backdrop is what we had as the tier list from last week.
Yeah, I should go through that. Sorry, you have to forgive me. Sometimes I get right into things. All right.
Respect it.
Yeah, so anyway, welcome to the WrestleWatch podcast, everyone. This is the only weekly podcast where we discuss free agency, contract negotiations, and the overall landscape of talent and management dynamics in the world of professional wrestling. You can follow us on the WrestleWatch YouTube channel, where we stream the show live every week, or find us on your podcast catcher of choice. You can follow us on X, where we post updates, including our meticulously curated WrestleWatch tier list, and on Substack for long-form articles, where we analyze the likelihood of talents leaving, joining, and of course, jumping between various wrestling promotions, with a special focus on WWE, AEW, New Japan, and Stardom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as you can see, that is the tier list right there on the screen. If you're watching along, if you're listening, it doesn't matter because the tier list is gonna change. Yep. And the first thing, of course, is, as was referenced right before, the Motor City Machine Guns. They were a safe jump from TNA, which is our highest tier on the tier list. And now they're confirmed because they showed up. It's over, right?
Yeah, can I just say one? Because obviously, I think our talking point here is that it just didn't feel like there was a whole lot of buzz that matched the hype going into this.
Yeah, so... Yeah. There was something that was weird about it was how they, debuted them via Twitter.
Okay. So let me just kind of backtrack with them.
Yeah, go ahead.
Quick.
Yeah.
So they have obviously been kind of the talk of WrestleWatch and jumps for going on, I want to say it might be going back to April, right? I have
Yeah.
to think about this. I mean, we might be
Well,
looking at a half a year with them.
let me look at when they first debuted on the tier list, and you can keep talking. Yeah.
Yeah, so the main thing with them is that this has been a long time coming, and it's been one where it jumped all over the place, where it's like, okay, well, maybe they're gonna go to AEW, and then eventually it changed to, oh, well, maybe they're gonna stay independent for a while, and then it's like, oh, they're going to WWE, and then it's like, we don't know where they're going, and then eventually it kind of settled into WWE. So it was definitely a situation where they seem to be jumping all over the place. I don't know that there was a bidding war,
Hmm.
because I don't think we've gotten confirmation that AEW made any offer at this time. My hunch is that it may be one. Like, I think we're probably gonna get a little bit more info on this eventually.
Hmm.
Just simply because there was talk of them potentially going to AEW at one point.
Yeah. So the history of them on the tier list started way back in March of this year. At the end of
Yep.
March, we added them to the tier list in what is now the likely jump category. They've gone or lean jump actually. It was a lean jump, and then we went up to a likely jump, and they've just been kind of ebbing and flowing between what was the S tier, the safe jump, all the way down to lean jump. But they've been pretty much just known as they're gonna jump at some point this year since March. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I knew this was like going on 6 months, because in the Wrestle friend group, like, we've had this running joke that whenever we do any type of fantasy booking, like just between us, we would always end with, and then it ends with the Motor City Machine Guns running out. And we just, no matter what we're talking about, we shoehorn in the Motor City Machine Guns as just a bit, because it just felt like for the longest time that's what people were doing. We're
Hmm.
just coming up with their dream scenarios for the Motor City Machine Gun debut. So it'd be every little thing like that, and eventually got into, this is how I think this is how Dune 2 is going to end. It's going to end with Motor City Machine Guns coming out. This is it just so it just became a running thing. So it's always been like part of my personal life is just like this Motor City Machine Guns nonsense. So it's just really funny that it just kind of, when it finally did happen, it was just kind of a fizzle. But I want to say this, and this is something very positive I want to say about WWE real quick, and that's that they are very good and potentially better than anyone right now at building up hype for a big debut.
Hmm.
They do the vignettes. They do uh, the cryptic stuff. You also have the things with the Wyatt Six. They kind of did that stuff with the with the puzzles. I'm not a big fan of the puzzle stuff. I think that's a little too corny for me. But the bottom line is it's very clear they're good at building up the hype. The problem is, I don't know that this one was necessarily warranted this hype. And I think that a lot of people are gonna be a little bit let down, and I feel bad for the Motor City Machine Guns because they don't deserve it. But it's just, I think they've built them up to the point where people have such high expectations that are impossible to meet.
Yeah. Yeah. So I here's my thing about it. Also, is that I think that as TC is pointing out in our chat, it is weird and strange that they debuted them via a Twitter post. Like that is bizarre, to put it lightly. It's bizarre to debut somebody in that fashion. Period. Um, and let alone somebody that is going to be. I thought that they would have been a big deal in AEW. I think if they came in, I think that that's the valid way of putting things off.
Bigger deal.
Yeah. And I think that, well, I think that like the way that AEW structures the tag division, as even if people have their gripes about the tag team division, the AEW tag division is something that is focused on as teams exist, and they're not existing just for the purpose of someday breaking up, right? So you have these teams that exist. You know, you have Young Bucks, you have FTR, you have Private Party, and all these teams are these teams. That is what they do. They do sometimes do singles work, but they're tag teams primarily. WWE's focus has really never been that. As far back to maybe the early 90s, maybe they were still doing it, but I would say like at the very latest, the focus on any kind of tag team wrestling ended when like the TLC era ended, essentially, with WWE. And that's the other funny thing about this, is that this is, I believe, the first time that WWE has signed a tag team as a unit and debuted them as a tag team since the Dudleys. Like we tried to go through it in the committee room last night, and we you know, some people were like, well, you know, like the Guerrillas of Destiny. Well, no, because Tama Tonga debuted first, so they were not debuted as a tag team. Doesn't count any of the NXT teams either, because they were originally from NXT, so the Shield doesn't count either. So it's like at the very least you could say the Shield, because I guess they weren't really a team in FCW beforehand, but like still it's like debuted from within. It's not going and finding somebody else from outside and debuting them like they've done with plenty of singles talent over the years, you know? So it is not in WWE's character to know what to do with tag teams. Or I guess somebody else pointed out the Good Brothers was another one, but the problem with that, of course, is Festus, so it doesn't count.
And the other thing is with the, I mean, the New York territory in general has never been a tag territory ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, its legacy promotion, going back to the 70s.
Yeah.
It was just never, there was no tags. That's not how they drew money.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising in that regard. Now, granted, this is the first time in, you know, a long time that the company doesn't really have a McMahon at the helm, even though, you know,
they kind of do have a McMahon at the
they
helm.
kind of, yeah, they still do. Yeah, you're right. But so we'll see where this goes.
Well,
but I don't necessarily have any strong, you know, faith that they're gonna suddenly start pushing tag team wrestling. I don't think any.
I would say yes and no. So, as our good buddy Luke, who was on the podcast only a few days ago, says in the chat, unfortunately, they didn't get a pop when they entered, but seemed to win the crowd over by the end. Good match debut, too. So I think that the thing that they were hoping for WWE was something that is not going to happen for maybe, 8 to 9 months and possibly a year, which is, I think that they were thinking they were going to get the Lucha Bros in at the same time. They were going to have these two tag teams debut at the same time, and they'd be able to overhype it in the way that WWE can do because of their position in the industry, and make it is a big deal. It is a big deal, no doubt about that they were able to get both of these tag teams, but make it seem like an even bigger like death of AEW kind of deal, if that makes sense. And unfortunately for WWE and for Ray Phoenix, not as much for Penta. He was the one that mouthed off. Is that's not what's going to happen, and it might be to the detriment of Motor City Machine Guns then that they're not getting their like partner tag team coming in at the same time, the yin to their yang at the same time. And I think that it could have been like if they kept all of these superstar tag teams on one brand. Is another problem with WWE is that they have two separate tag divisions, or three separate tag divisions really with NXT. So it's hard for them to just like plug in Motor City Machine Guns and then plug in Lucha Bros. Well, then the problem is that you're going to get, once, you know, Raw is on Netflix, you're going to get that debate then of like, well, we want the Lucha Bros on our show and you guys can have Motor City Machine Guns over on that network. And the politics might kill the hype of a tag division possibility here. So that's my take, is that I think that this could have been a bigger deal. I do see them probably getting pushed to having the tag titles fairly soon. I don't even know who the SmackDown or whatever is the name of the tag titles on SmackDown. I think that that's the WWE tag champions. I don't know who they are. So I don't know but like I think that that's might be because of the fact that like it just it's is it the Bloodline still?
It might be. Let's see. What we here? We have the
No,
undisputed
oh yeah, it's
WWE Tag Team Champions.
oh
Do
yeah,
they have them
that's
both?
yeah, I messed up the names, obviously. This is the biggest problem of my yeah, so there's the World Tag Team Champions, and then there are the WWE Tag Champions, because the World Tag, everything that is just World, so World Heavyweight Championship, all of that kind of stuff is on Raw, plus the Intercontinental title. And then everything that is Undisputed or WWE is on SmackDown, and the US title, which is funny because the US title was originally the WCW, and the World Heavyweight Championship is essentially trying to crib the lineage of the WCW belt. So it should be flipped, but the tag champions for SmackDown are the Bloodline. So
Yes. Okay. And then the World Tag Team Champions are
Judgment Day.
currently the Judgment Day.
Yeah, JD and Finn. So yeah, it's currently they're doing Freebird with it because of Tongaloa's injury. So I think currently it's like Jacob Fatu is technically defending the tag championship there, but I could see then them, especially because if the long-term plan is to move the Bloodline to Raw because of Netflix, I could see them pushing over the Motor City Machine Guns to win the tag belts off of the Bloodline, and do it before the end of the year too, for that matter.
Yeah, I mean it. Well, yeah, and there's. I guess the thing is, like, as you said, it's still even with this, they don't really have. I don't know if they have the. They don't have the roster to sustain both of them. So
I,
I don't know how you're going to keep the Motor City Machine Guns hot going all the way until the Lucha Bros, and if that is the plan, if that is what they're going for,
well,
because
and
obviously you have
yeah,
the Bloodline's going to be in its own little universe, and I don't think they're going to get tied into that. Maybe they will, but I don't think so.
no, I mean, they might try to play up like some kind of like um, maybe when no, because AJ is now injured and everything. I was gonna say, oh, they'll find like some old TNA people and be like, oh yeah, these guys are obviously buddies, right? So they'll have like a mini faction of TNA guys, a team TNA, if you will. Uh, but I think that like once they've I think Axiom and Nathan Fraser, once they've like had their time at NXT, I could see them getting called up, and that would be a really good opponent for Motor City Machine Guns. I could see them bringing the Good Brothers back into the fold on SmackDown and having them play with the Motor City Machine Guns because of that TNA connection and all those kinds of things. So I think that there are some possibilities for some programs for them for a little while before the Lucha Bros finally do premiere in WWE. But yeah, like it is a little bit sparse, and I still think that they made the wrong choice with decoupling the titles. But that's my personal opinion on that part of things. I think that they shouldn't have split up the world title either. But I think that that's a hot take, and that's something that we usually say for the end of the show. And then we have TC in the chat saying they're doing Motor City Machine Guns versus DIY next week, which should be a great match, but that's a big match to run in week two of their run. Yeah, that's like something that I would have thought that they would have built up to, but maybe it's just them starting that as the first match of a series of matches between Motor City and DIY. I think that that's a good opponent for Motor City to show off and for them to elevate the local talent, as it were.
Yeah, I think we're. Oh, first of all, I'll say this. I think we've hit our limit on the amount of fantasy booking we could do on this week's episode.
Yeah.
I think we need to redirect ourselves back to the task at hand. So
Okay.
the first thing I think we need to do is talk about their jump. So we had them at pretty much confirmed safe jumps. Like we knew they were going. So I think it's fair to say that we were correct on this one. I don't think we could have got any more correct. We had a safe jump.
I will say that we were initially very wrong about this because from April until July, we had them as a safe jumper at S tier because we thought that they were going to AEW.
This is fair, but we
So
also we
we
adjusted
adjusted,
once.
and I tried hard to push back, and everybody else on the committee was very vehement about, oh wait, no, they're definitely going to jump, and I was like, well, it's like there's so much uncertainty now. Like I would like to bring them back down a tier. So I think that who was it? Corey Brennan maybe might have been one of the ones to have said that they were finalizing a contract. Or Cassidy Haynes, that was it. It was Cassidy Haynes that said that they were trying to finalize a contract with AEW back April of earlier this year. So I think that like something happened, obviously, but yeah, eventually we got it right, and that's all that matters, as TC says. And I like that thought process. That's very optimistic of us.
Yes.
So I think that that's about as much as we can say about the Motor City Machine Guns. How about we go into another person in the WWE roster that we wanted to look at, reevaluate where they at on the tier list, and that is Kevin Owens. There has been some reports recently that maybe it's been all over the place, honestly. And I think that the way that Dave Meltzer phrased it in the most recent Wrestling Observer is truly the craziest and silliest way of putting it, but really the truth of how it is. Quote, there are reports that Kevin Owens is close to re-signing with WWE or hasn't signed, comma, and could go to AEW in January when his deal is up. But multiple people in wrestling have said, comma, dating back to August that they believed he's re-signed, comma, and it's being kept quiet. So in the course of 2 sentences, he says they're close to re-signing, they're going to AEW in January, and they've already re-signed. He's already re-signed. So, Doug, where do you think the truth is in Kevin Owens?
I think that he may have already quietly re-signed. I do know for a fact that his deal is up January 31st. If that, and I think that there's a good chance that it's already, because here's the thing, if someone thinks he's already quietly re-signed, it does seem like this is something we're seeing a little bit more of lately, where they're just kind of playing this up, where it's like, no, yeah, just keep it quiet, and then suddenly, oh look, they were here all along. I think that that's definitely a realistic possibility. I think that at this point, him going to AEW is probably not happening, and I'm going to, and we already had him as a lean jump.
Or lean stay. We had a lean stay.
Lean stay. I apologize. Yes, we had as a lean stay, and I would say that this report makes me think he's more likely to stay.
Yeah, I think that it's more likely that he's going to stay, but at the same time, I think that I think nobody knows what's going on, and that it's possible that they're putting out this feeling that maybe he re-signed already back in August even. I think that they're putting that out to try to quell things or to work shoot this. Because he's doing a lot of work shoot like Twitter promo stuff right now with his storyline with Cody. They're bringing up his contract on SmackDown. So it sounds like there was a pretty decent shot, as TC puts it, a pretty decent shot of him sticking around in WWE. But the way that they're just, it feels, I don't know. There's just something off about it at the same time, but WWE has been doing a better job in recent months, mostly this year, honestly, of re-signing people that we have thought might have reason to leave the promotion. So I wouldn't be shocked if he had already re-signed, and that's why it's being kept quiet, is because they wanted to put it into a storyline with Cody of all people, which makes sense. But I do think it's also possible that maybe they're like, maybe people are just like doing a old switcheroo on themselves, and working themselves into a shoot of thinking that, well, it seems like maybe then because the storyline started in August, maybe it already re-signed in August. It's possible he didn't. And I think that somebody would have figured out if he had already re-signed by now. I feel like somebody would have mentioned it to someone that they shouldn't have.
Yeah, that's probably likely. So based off of that, I'm gonna go likely stay.
I'm gonna go likely stay as well. I think that is just the prudent place to put him right now. And let's see what the committee said. Likely stay is where he is going to likely stay. Yeah. I think in chat some of the folks are saying Luke and TC are both pointing out possible. Hey, we're doing the booking again. We're doing some fantasy booking again. Let's see if he can get another Austin match. He might want Cena for the farewell tour. Those are both possibilities of why he might be trying to push to stay, or things that they might be offering to him.
I also think we got to keep in mind Kevin Owens was, even though he's obviously a guy who, cut his teeth on the indies, he was always a guy that was, he wanted to end up in WWE. WWE was like, he didn't watch indie wrestling growing up. He was a WWE kid. He was very open about that. So I don't know that he's willing to do it just because for the love of the game, so to speak. Having said that, Tony Khan, I really have a hard time believing that Tony Khan wouldn't pay more than WWE.
Oh yeah, no, he would absolutely pay more than WWE. And also, let's remind ourselves of one of the most famous shows that Kevin Owens attended for WWE was the Screwjob. So maybe it's still in the back of his head. But yeah, he's not the kind of guy that grew up on WCW. He's not the kind of guy that grew up on indies and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't have that vibe to him that somebody will get to a little bit later when we want to talk about Bryan Danielson of necessarily having Danielson is like somewhat of like a winning competition vibe to him. So yeah, I think we'll see what happens with Kevin. But I think that we'll find out sooner rather than later if he actually I think that if he actually re-signed in August, we will find out pretty soon if that is true. Because I think that now that genie has been opened, that bottle has been opened, we're going to see if there's a genie inside of it. Somebody's going to ask around if there's a genie inside of it. That analogy it wasn't the best. Let me just put that out there.
That's okay, because we can move on to the next person.
Yeah.
That's going to be Jordynne Grace.
Yeah, Jordynne Grace. So the thing with why she was brought up again here, was due to her contract's running out soon, right? That's kind of the vibe of it.
Yeah, and she definitely feels like someone that WWE would like to have.
Yeah, and I would point out, though, that since that program that she did with Roxanne Perez, she has not appeared again on WWE TV.
No. Well, let me ask you this. Has
anybody?
I mean,
no.
Yeah, when the TNA partnership, I'm not saying it's dead or anything like that, obviously. It's still, we're still having bits and pieces here and there, but it definitely feels like it's cooled off.
I have noticed this a lot because of also when we were talking about Joe Hendry before. It is notable that Joe Hendry, after the match at No Mercy, which was September 1st, has not reappeared on NXT program, I believe. Jordynne Grace did not appear after the match with Roxanne Perez. It does feel like that things cooled off with that relationship once the CW shows started up, and the build up to CW. And since then on CW, I have not. We can get some confirmation possibly from Luke maybe, or TC, or anybody else listening in on the show here. Thank you everybody that is watching along for today's episode.
I mean, I'm looking at his cage match, and yeah, that was the last time Joe Hendry was on there for sure.
Yeah, so it feels like it's cooled off. However, I still don't think that that is necessarily indicative that they're not interested in Jordynne Grace or Joe Hendry for that matter.
I agree.
So I am still feeling that it's still a lean jump from TNA. I
Yeah.
think that she's gonna leave TNA. I think
Right.
when
I
the
say
contract's over.
if anything, if the agreement and partnership between NXT and TNA did end, if anything, it would just mean it more likely that she would jump, because this once again is just that's just WWE's playbook, where they would, going back to the 80s, where they would like, oh, we're going to highlight your talent. They see who gets over, and then they sign them away.
Yeah. So Luke is pointing out in the chat that when the NXT talent have come over to TNA since like the lower tier NXT talent that they're trying out, Jordynne's been working with them a ton. And yeah, TC was mentioning about Joe Hendry about doing a promo that he's wanting to stick around or would like to stick around NXT. That was before the match with Ethan Page, if I recall. So yeah, it's been a little bit of time, but I think that it's still likely that both of those talent are wanted by WWE. And yeah, so I think the question is, for right now, I don't see any more likelihood of her going to WWE than there was before. I think that she is going to leave TNA at the end of her contract. That's why it was renegotiated to be shorter than it was previously, to end 6 months earlier. But I'm not positive yet that WWE is definitely the destination. So I'm keeping it tepidly at a lean jump. How about you, Doug?
I will go likely jump.
Okay.
I still think it's more likely than not that she's going. I think it's a little bit more than, as we get closer and closer, I think it's more likely she does go. I
Yeah.
mean, because that feels like the destination. It does.
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like we would have heard something if she had interest in AEW, or if there was any interest on their end, and just
Yeah.
we haven't heard anything on that. So I'm gonna say I'm going likely jump.
Yeah. So the committee agrees with you, Doug, on this one. They are also thinking that we need to move her up to the likely jump category, going from TNA to possibly WWE pretty soon. I say that as I have on another screen here on mute. I have the My Little Pony, the Maple Leaf Pro show, and everybody's favorite TNA star, Bully Ray, is entering the screen for a match with QT Marshall, which makes me want to turn that off. So I'm very happy to then be talking about one more thing that we have about WWE is Stephanie Vaquer was brought back up. There was a little bit of I don't know if I would say it's a long piece, but it was a mid-range piece from Fightful where they were discussing the impact of Stephanie's departure from CMLL. Let me try to find it so that I can do the exact text. Yeah. Those we spoke to around the Mexican wrestling scene are of the belief that Vaquer will not need to return to the scene and exited accordingly, which is very spicily
Burning a bridge.
That is burning a bridge and very spicily worded. Sources in AEW did say that she made a good impression with her Mercedes feud, but they could tell shortly after Forbidden Door that WWE had reached out and that she would eventually head to the company, though how quickly it came together surprised many. Sources in AEW said that they understood the element of WWE wanting a great talent and that they were also after phrasing. Great, we need an editor of Fightful, please. But didn't quite understand the element of pulling her from CMLL dates before she could drop a title that she needed to drop. However, when she was quickly turned around and wrestled on the WWE Mexico shows, that alleviated some of the criticism compared to her simply being signed and pulled off shows, which, I mean, like, it didn't, I don't, I think that that's editorialization of it alleviating criticism. It doesn't sound like that's what the AEW sources are saying. Thus far, WWE have appeared to be very happy with Vaquer, and she appears to be enjoying her time there. Um, Okay. New Japan and AEW sources believe that it's likely that talent that work Forbidden Door or co-promoted AEW shows in the future would have to make an arrangement to not immediately go to WWE. This has not been confirmed within the company. Sean Ross Sapp then later on had to clarify because that was very vague, and people on places like Reddit were trying to say that Tony Khan is trying to put wrestlers into indentured servitude. The clarification is that talents that are not assigned to AEW, so talent that are assigned to New Japan and CMLL, will likely have to have more stringent contracts to work shows on AEW in the future. So either having long-term contracts or actually being signed to these promotions, which seems to have been another issue, was that they're people that are on handshake deals with CMLL or New Japan, and they then go and do an AEW TV show, and then they get interest from WWE. So there's a few pieces there of interesting notes. Again, as pointed out by Doug immediately when I read it, that it sounds like she burnt bridges with CMLL. I think that's the first thing to point out there. I do think that it looks like it was editorialized about the alleviating criticism portion of that. And yeah, so it sounds like it doesn't sound like that they're going to be restructuring possibly contracts for CMLL and New Japan, but it might cause that. So Doug, what are you thinking on all this?
So I think the big thing to take away from this, and I think something that a lot of people were kind of getting I would say getting wrong on this, and that's that some people were thinking, oh, this is a move by AEW to keep AEW talent from jumping, and that's not what this is at all. This is clearly a move by AEW to protect its partner promotions that are, smaller and weaker and do not have the ability to fend off a giant WWE offer. So they're putting in place a policy where, whatever it may be, a year or so, that if you work a Forbidden Door, you need to sign an agreement that you will not go to WWE for a year. If that's what the time frame is. And I think that's fair. That's a reasonable thing to do. And especially after what happened with Vaquer. But I think that I will say this, I do think that there may be certain people in Mexico that may balk at that and say they don't want to do that. So it'll be interesting to see how next year kind of works in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think that this was obviously going to happen after after the way Vaquer left, because I think that CMLL did kind of CMLL got burned. Obviously.
Yeah. It seems like it's more about because this is what he's out to now. Like Strawn is now like replying to the people on Twitter because it wasn't, it was too vague of a statement at the end of that. It sounds like it's about protecting New Japan and CMLL talent from the situation. Sean said that yes, that is essentially what's going on. Lucha Brock suspected that would happen back when the situation played out with Vaquer, that this would cause CMLL talent to not appear as much on AEW programming, which it seems like Atlantis Jr. has been essentially the only CMLL signed guy, and Mystico was the other one. But those two are guys that are like pretty locked in, right? Because Mystico is the guy for CMLL. He's already done WWE. He doesn't seem like he wants to go back. And then Atlantis Jr. is, a legacy guy in CMLL. So it's not like he's not, likely to jump as much as other people that might not have as strong ties to somebody that's, I think his father is still wrestling in the promotion, but unmasked. Another thing that Sean went on to clarify was somebody replying saying, quote, "I'm confused. Is this just we're not going to use other people's talent that are aren't under an explicit contract?" And Sean said that that's the most likely scenario. So yeah, any more thoughts on any of this? Oh yeah, so let's look at the chat here. TC was saying, was it the Ben Carter deal that got them to institute the Tier 0 policy initially? I do remember that with Ben Carter appearing on Dark and then immediately getting signed up. That was also around the same time that they started to fill out the NXT roster when it went to 2.0 with a bunch.
I believe Tier 0 existed before that. I think that because Ben Carter was offered a Tier 0
Yes,
deal.
he was. He just didn't want it. Yeah, it was a bidding war. And now he's possibly going to be winning the Tag Team of the Year award for PWI. So I think it worked out pretty well for him, honestly. But
like I said, what I think we've talked about this before, but I think that speaks very highly or lowly, I should say, of the current tag division as it exists.
In every promotion, yeah. But
yeah,
at the same time,
all of wrestling.
But at the same time, I want to give flowers to him and Axiom, because like they're actually are very good tag team, and I would highly recommend people to check out their matches, especially like essentially just the pay-per-view matches, because it's a lot of backlog to look at otherwise. But I liked their match with the Good Brothers a few months ago, and that says a lot to like a current Good Brothers match. Luke is saying Lucha Blog wrote some months back that CMLL would be reluctant to impose stricter contract terms, considering their history of being a generally pro-labor contract. But it's understandable why AEW would look into this for talents that come through for a booking or two. Yeah, this is something that was kind of what I was going for with it, was that it sucks for CMLL especially, and for New Japan also, because those are companies that either have been very lax about the rigidity of the contracts, or also have been open to having like just 1-year deals, so it puts those two companies into a bit of a pickle now to try to structure contracts in a certain way, and it's all because of like it was taken advantage of by an outside promotion.
Yep, absolutely. So with that, I think we can go on to the next person.
Yeah, let's go ahead into AEW for a second. Let's do a pit stop over here with a Britt stop. It's Britt Baker. We previously had her as a safe stay at AEW. Sean Ross Sapp on Twitter, or it might have been on his Discord channel. Actually, he was asked for a status on Kevin Owens and on Britt Baker, and he only answered the Britt Baker question with, she is under contract for some time. Not really definite, like how long that is, but she is under contract for a little bit while longer. Based off of that, I'm still not. I personally would keep her on right now, because I think that there was enough thoughts about wanting her to stay on originally, or put her on originally. How are you feeling about just taking her off, though, Doug?
I can go either way. I kind of lean towards safe stay, just because there's been a couple things going on here and there.
Mm-hmm.
She got suspended, and it's enough to keep her on, but I would keep her at the very, very bottom at safe stay.
Yeah, like I don't want us to get trapped by certain things that happen. Like, so for example, she had strep throat, so that's been keeping her off of TV for a little bit now. But at the same time, like her contract was re-signed in 2021 around this time, so if it was a 3-year deal, which it's possible it wasn't, possibly it was longer, it could have been 5-year, who knows. But if it was a 3-year deal, then her contract would theoretically be up around now. So it's kind of that, like, I'm basing it off of kind of like speculation based off of a hard fact, and then like I feel like that some of the one to remove her is based off of speculation based off of a vague comment from someone. So yeah, I think that also when you were talking about, Doug, about like, yeah, there are other factors that we were talking about with this. That's I'm kind of on the safe stay side still as well. But our committee would like to say that they have low confidence in this right now, and would like to have her removed from the tier list for the time being.
I think that's fair.
I think it's fair. I would have liked to keep her on, but it's fine enough. I don't think that there's anything pressing enough that I would like to definitely keep her on.
I'm not fighting to take her off.
I'm not fighting to take her off. I'm not fighting to keep her on. Yeah. And next up, we're going to talk about Bryan Danielson briefly, a little pit stop on this one as well. Some people had been wanting to possibly put him back on the tier list. The situation that it seems to be progressing here with Bryan Danielson after WrestleDream, it was reported in multiple reports now that AEW is expecting him to return to at least return into, backstage work once his leave is over, is the best way I can put it. And then also a most recent report last week by Fightful was saying that Danielson even wants to come back to AEW once he's done with this little leave of absence.
Yeah,
So
and it sounds like he's also going to get neck surgery.
yeah, yeah, his neck surgery is about to start up. It sounds like. So my vibe on this is that like first off, even if somebody thinks that he's going to jump somewhere else, and that would be essentially he's going to go to WWE. He's stated multiple times he doesn't want to go back to WWE. He's about to have neck surgery, so that would put it as a very long time. We're now getting reports from both AEW and Danielson saying that he wants to come back to AEW once he is done with this like leave of absence. I don't see anything speculation wise here that would make me want to put him on, but I do find it interesting that this is possibly like the first person that's come over to AEW that's now like going to stick around, after retiring. Somebody that wasn't one of the original guys, that the original like EVP level people that has been integrated into that kind of level of a role.
Yeah, I don't see him. I don't see it either.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to. I have no reason to put him on the tier list. I am curious to see what his part-time schedule, what does part-time mean to him?
Yeah. This is something that I have my pet theory is that he's gonna try to do the G1 next year.
Yeah, it's like that's what I want to know. Is this guy, because we're talking about a part-time schedule for him, who when he thinks full-time is like, oh, wrestling 1 or 2 times a week.
Yeah.
So does that mean he's wrestling monthly? Is he wrestling quarterly? Is he wrestling once a year? I don't know.
Well, so TC points out he believes that he might be trying to get stem cell treatment, but I'm not sure if that's the case. But also this is an interesting thing as well to think about with this is a Sting. Think about it as a Sting context, right? So Sting comes in and he worked a part-time schedule, and part-time for Sting meant a match like every month or so, And I could see Danielson looking at that and saying, yeah, that's part-time, but then wanting to be like, yeah, but also could we do one of those matches being like, blood and guts? Could we have that being gotta do the G1, gotta do the CC, because he's a sicko.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that like it's also interesting to point out that Sting is now possibly the first living Legends deal that they've done for AEW. So there's Owen Hart, obviously, has the state of Owen Hart has a deal with AEW for his likeness and image and all those kinds of things. The Brody Lee estate also has a deal in a similar way, but Sting is now the first one to be a living person to have a Legends deal with AEW, and I think that at the very least Danielson might be amenable to that. But I think that it's more likely that it seems that he's going to be backstage at AEW and having that kind of EVP-esque role. And I have him going to the finals of the G1 next year. Let's see what happens. He's gonna do Anarchy in the Arena, and then he's gonna do Blood and Guts, and then he's gonna fly over to Japan.
Yep. We'll see how that goes. But for right now, I think I'm fine keeping him off. We'll find out.
I'm fine as well.
We only got 2 more to go through, right?
Yeah. So we got our friend of the pod, friend of the watch, Ninja Mack. He is currently a lean stay independent. So you left Pro Wrestling Noah with the intention of going somewhere else, somewhere bigger possibly as well. And so we've been watching this pretty intently to see if he would have any hints or any indication of where this might be that he might be going. And well, I'm out that he will be appearing as a tag team in the Super Junior Tag League coming up. So,
Yeah,
where do we think this means, Doug?
I think it means nothing in terms for our purposes. I would not. I don't think it changes anything. We have him currently at a lean stay independent. If it's up to me, I would keep him at lean stay independent because, as we said before, you know, just he first of all he's done this before, hasn't he?
He's done I think he was on Best of the Super Juniors even, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that's just how that's how New Japan works. They just bring people in. So to me, I am changing nothing. I stay. We keep it at lean stay independent at this time.
I would like to move him up at least one tier because of two factors or three factors here. One, in the intervening time with Noah, he was performing very well. He was one of the top guys in Noah, I feel like. He incidentally and accidentally kind of became their world champion of the GHC, which was fun when that happened. But you know, he was a bigger name in Noah, relatively speaking, for them. Two, um, now with all the stuff that we were talking about during the Vaquer segment, it's possible that New Japan might be wanting to lock down people a little bit more than they had before. So people that are freelance showing up in these tournaments might have a little bit more of agreements with New Japan. And three, this is the one that it goes back to then is Jake Lee, where we thought initially, oh, well, he's just showing up for the G1. He's not really signing with New Japan. He's not really leaving, right? And no, he actually legitimately left Noah and legitimately signed with New Japan. And we just didn't know that in the moment because they were kayfabing it so well. So that all those things together equal to me that I would like to move him up to a toss up at the very least.
Okay. Well, what did the committee decide?
The committee decided to move him up to a toss up. So 50-50 ball, I think that that's that's reasonable. I think that there is a 50-50 shot that he might actually be signing with New Japan or being staying independent.
And here's the other thing that's going to be interesting, and something we'll have to talk about later, because I want to see like what they do with Forbidden Door and what these contracts or agreements that they're going to put these people under. Because if that's the case, would those would we see people kind of get locked down just to keep them out in that regard too?
Well, it might be that they might have people sign like, a longer term agreement, or the people that are involved with Forbidden Door have to have longer term agreements. It doesn't sound like to me that it's necessarily going to be you have to have an additional contract on top that is a promise deal to not a non-compete promise deal kind of a thing. It just sounds like to me that they're going to have them the people that are going to be signed are going to, or excuse me, the people that are going to be appearing are people that are signed long term, or not flight risk people.
Yeah, that's also true.
Next up, and I think this is the last one for today's show, is somebody that was competing tonight on Friendship is Magic, Fortune Excellence, Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, Speedball Mike Bailey. He had a match earlier today, and by earlier today, I mean like 30 minutes ago, an hour ago, against El Phantasmo on that program. Yesterday, he had an excellent showing against the international champion Konosuke Takeshita on the program as well. Um, the big thing though with all this is what we've mentioned before with this Maple Leaf Pro show, which is extremely well produced. I don't know if you watched any of it, Doug.
I've seen a lot of clips from it, and you're right. It looked like a super professional operation. It was very impressive, honestly, and it felt like indie wrestling back before indie wrestling died.
Yeah.
I feel like it back when we were all going to shows like on a monthly basis. It felt like to random bars and things like that, and all over the world. Like every little city had its own little promotion that was the hottest thing. and then that just died shortly. I mean, COVID killed a lot of it, obviously, but I think just the talent wasn't there, and I think for a while it seemed like AEW was kind of holding up a lot of people by letting them do indie dates, and that's kind of slowed down a little bit.
Hmm.
But now we're kind of seeing this is almost a resurgence of that.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Some people were kind of comparing it to like it's like a Canadian Rev Pro.
yeah, I think maybe that's part of it is that because it is Canadian. I think a lot of these maybe the American ones are slowed down and
Yeah.
they're not letting them do American dates as much. That's just my speculation. And but since it's Canada, it's a little different.
Yeah, but right now, prominently on my screen right now, on my second screen, is Ring of Honor Women's World Champion Athena defending her belt. And the main event tonight is going to be AEW International Champion Konosuke Takeshita defending his belt. Now, of course, the interesting things about this, and this is going to get back to Speedball. Believe me, it will. I'm going to wrap it back in pretty quickly on this one. Is that
Okay.
Athena is defending it against Giselle Shaw, who is on the tier list, of course. I think that Giselle is probably going to stay independent, and that's where we have her down in that half of the tier list. But she was somebody that was in TNA and then left TNA. Okay, and she is going up against somebody in an official title defense for a TKA promotion belt. Okay, we have the main event is to Konosuke Takeshita, the newly crowned international champion with his first title defense, I believe, is against a TNA wrestler, Josh Alexander, right? Who's now somebody that we have on the tier list because we think that there are high enough odds with him appearing on this show and him not being involved in any of the NXT crossover and him having a little bit of disgruntlement about how the option was picked up on him without him wanting it to be. Maybe he will be jumping as well. So finally, we have Speedball Mike Bailey. He is another person that has not been involved in any of the NXT crossover. His contract is expiring at the end of this year, and he got a what was essentially a title eliminator match against Takeshita last night. I think that the I think that things are heating up with this. Now, the thing is, though, it's possible that somebody like Mike Bailey will do the indie circuit, the super indie role. Um, and I think that's also possible that depending on how well developed Maple Leaf Pro becomes, I think that they're trying to position themselves as a very professional looking organization in the production style that they have. This is a beautiful production style. It looks like TNA. Like it
Yeah,
looks super beautiful.
that yeah, you could tell that it's clearly like Scott Demore just took his people.
Yes, yeah, and he's hired people that are available that are professional television people to help him with this program, and it looks great. It's been a treat to watch this, honestly. Um, but I think that something that some people might not be aware of is how integral the Canadian federal government can be about pushing funds to the arts and to television and film productions in Canada. They really love pushing arts to the point where, like, a band like the Arkells can play stadiums in Canada and then play a club over across the river in Buffalo, or a band like Alexis on Fire can play state arenas in Canada and just doing clubs in America, or having to open for other people in America. They're headlining in Canada. It's like they push Canadian art very well in Canada. And it allows for an actual music scene and film and television market to be a purely Canadian works to be pushed. I think that it's possible that Scott's looking at trying to position Maple Leaf Pro in a similar vein, in a similar area, as like a purely Canadian promotion. And in which case, I think that it's possible that somebody like Speedball could, you know, maybe sign there permanently, which would be pushing down the tier list and staying independent, because we would be looking at Maple Leaf Pro as being an independent promotion. But I think that as I'm saying this, and I know that I've said a lot now on I've been on the horn for a little bit right here. I think that is I think that as his contract is about to wind up, and as it is obvious that Tony Khan wants to play ball with him, I think that we should move him up a tier.
Yeah, I agree. I think that him at toss up at this point doesn't feel right. I think that he is more likely to jump, and I think he's one of the people that I think is more likely to jump to AEW. I think he's just I think he's the guy that Tony would go for
Yeah.
if he could. So yeah, I will agree with that.
Yeah, and in the chat, well, something for the last segment is, hey Ninja Mac, if you want to set the record straight on the WrestleWatch floor is yours, man. Yeah, I think we've talked about it before behind the scenes. I would love to get wrestlers on as guests to try to talk to them. I really like that interview that Dijak did with I think it's like D Porticus, which is like a new fan of wrestling guy. Really like that interview. So yeah, if any wrestlers are listening in, we would love to have you on the show. And yeah, people have been saying that it does feel like DPW kind of feel to it, where it feels like a super well produced indie. The production's really impressive. Yeah, so I think with Speedball, I think that let's look at the panel, our committee has said let's put him as a lean jump from TNA, and I think that is a perfectly good position to put him as right now.
I agree, and I think that's that works for me.
So before we look at what the tier list is right now, did you have any hot takes that you wanted to talk about?
You know what? It's only been 4 days since our last show. Why don't we hold off on hot takes? Let's let them build up a little bit.
Okay, we'll let them build up a little bit. Let's walk through and talk through the new current WrestleWatch Pro Wrestling Movement probability tier list. Up in the safe jump tier, we have Hikuleo, Penta El Zero Miedo, and Bobby Lashley.
All right, in the likely jump, we have Michael Oku, Ray Phoenix, and Jordynne Grace.
Oku is very intriguing. I don't know if you caught across the wire what he's been doing the past few days.
Well, Royal Quest was today.
Yes.
I believe he wrestled, was it Kosei Fujita, I think?
It was Fujita,
right?
Yeah. So a few days ago, or it might have been last week now, when Thunder Rosa wrestled that Riot Cabaret show where she won their title, that was Michael Oku held the men's title previously. And he dropped it at All In Weekend, and that was like one of the big signals of like, hey, maybe Oku is, about to debut in AEW. He had a rematch with Mark Andrews of Subculture, and he lost the rematch. Okay, so solidifies Mark Andrews as the Riot Cabaret champion. That's one indie down. Moku has solidified somebody else as the champion. Rev Pro. He won a match on Rev Pro's show this past week, which was in conjunction with Royal Quest. He beat Ricky Knight Jr., somebody that I've been pushing to put on the tier list, for a number one contenders to the undisputed British Heavyweight Championship. So it looks like, to me, if we look at like what happened with Riot Cabaret, I think it's possible that Oku's about to lose again to Luke Jacobs to solidify Luke as the guy for Rev Pro. But it's something to keep an eye on in case Oku regains that title, because that might be indicating that maybe he's not as likely of a jump as we think he is.
So something to keep an eye on.
Keep an eye on. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Lean jumps, we have Ricky Starks, Zilla Fatu, who it sounds like Booker T wants to get to WWE. We got Miro and Speedball Mike Bailey as well.
All right, and then for toss-ups, we have Mustafa Ali, Megan Bain, Josh Alexander, Mina Shirakawa, Beth Phoenix, Ninja Mack.
Lean stays, we have Joe Hendry, Shinsuke Nakamura, Dijak, The Hardys, Mayu Iwatani, and Alex Windsor.
For likely stay, we have Sami Zayn, Tekla, AJ Styles, Viva Van, and Kevin Owens.
And then the long list of safe stays. We have Suri, Utami Hayashishita, Hook, Street Profits, El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr., Dustin Rhodes, El Hijo de Vikingo, Katsuhiko Nakajima, Shane McMahon, Alex Wolf, Becky Lynch, Bozilla, and Giselle Shaw, who is currently fighting Athena. So,
all right. So there we go.
Yeah.
That is the show this week, I believe. Do you have any final thoughts?
I don't have many final thoughts here, but TC in the chat is mentioning that the Vegeta Oku match was really good, and that Luke Jacobs is someone that he might be pushing to add to the tier list soon. Oh, that's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, the British indies are getting a little bit hot again. And as you said, it's possible that maybe Tony Khan is trying to not just swallow up everybody from it. I think
That would make sense.
yeah. So with that, I think that is the end of this week's episode of WrestleWatch. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you have not already subscribed, please subscribe to us on YouTube or your favorite podcast app so you get the episodes as soon as they come out. Follow us on Twitter and on Substack to get our continued thoughts about things and get updates of when we're going to be streaming next. Anything else from you, Doug?
Nope, that's it. So I'm Doug.
And I'm Ryan. Good night, bang, and good night.